Hey guys, and welcome to this week's episode of All Hands. As usual, I'm Kevin, the new warehouse. We're here, it's Friday, getting ready for Memorial Day weekend. So I hope everybody has a great holiday weekend. I just got back from Manhattan Associates Momentum out in Phoenix, Arizona. It was a fantastic event. Got to see a lot of friends out there from some from Sodi, from Staylink, James at Pacurate, Fulfillment IQ team. It's great to see you guys and definitely be out there and see everybody else and learn about the latest with Manhattan Associates and very interesting stuff. If you didn't get a chance to tune into our LinkedIn lives from over there, definitely check them out on our page or on our YouTube as well. They're posted there now for the replay. We had some interesting discussions around sustainability that's on Manhattan's page actually, and then our page we had a discussion around the anatomy of a modern warehouse, and we also talked about the unified supply chain, which is a big theme for the week for Manhattan. So really interesting things, and I think one of the things that kind of stuck out for a lot of people were Manhattan's efforts in starting to get AI involved. So I think that's coming soon, not quite out yet, but we'll see. And one of the other big announcements too as well was their yard management system updates, which are incredibly intuitive. User interface is amazing, but also very smart in the unified supply chain department because it's connecting to that WMS, TMS, and now all of that is kind of connecting together and communicating with each other. And one of the big examples they were showing off was that now that the YMS is going to be able to tell you what is the best door to put that trailer in, so it's closest to that directed put away location where that inventory is going to live, which is really smart, I think, and makes a huge impact when you look at it exponentially over time, and especially for buildings with lots of doors too and lots of space. So really interesting stuff for them. Great event. So thank you so much to them. And they did a little camping theme as well out there. It was the electric desert, but had some cool shirts. I got mine on. You know, I always have my shirt on for the shout out. So this is Manhattan Outfitters to go with their camping theme. Really cool stuff going on there. So this week on All Hands, we are going to have a safety tip from Samuel Reeves of Fort Robotics from ProMat as well. He gave one a couple weeks back, but he actually gave us two at ProMat. So this is going to be part 2 of his safety tip. And for the main segment, we're going to talk to Rich Walsh. He is from AMP. He's given us a safety tip in the past, but he's going to give us actually a little demo on the AMP platform and what it looks like and how it really works and how you can look at your associates as what he calls industrial athletes. So it's very interesting looking at the ergonomics from a safety perspective and really being able to help your associates work towards being more ergonomic, being safer, and really suited well to do the job and help them to do it easier too from a lifting perspective, position perspective, lots of different things. Really interesting stuff. So that's our main segment for today. Also coming up, you can catch me next at Work Conference down in Orlando. I will be there for the first day on Monday, June 5th, and I'll be speaking on the flexible workforce in the warehouse, and I'll be doing that with Daniel from InstaWork. He's been on the podcast before. He's the chief economist over there. So we'll be talking about that topic and really diving into that, which I think is a really interesting thing. And, you know, I've been able to leverage some of that in our micro fulfillment center as well. So interested in diving into that. If you're going to be at work, please let me know and we'll connect there if we can. I will be there on that Monday. So let me know in the comments or send me a message. Let's connect and do something. Also coming up, we'll be at Home Delivery World as well. So if you'll be there, we'll have the whole booth set up there. So if you're trying to get on the mic, want to share safety tips, something like that, be sure to reach out and we can get you lined up with that. So for now, let's get into the safety tip with Sam Reeves from Fort Robotics.
You know, for manual machines, you got to have the right person that is authorized, that's trained, that is able to operate the machine. You got to have the machine in working order before it's operated. So it's really important to do a safety checklist. Something as simple as a basic checklist before a human gets on a machine and operates it. And so Fort can provide those safety networks that help people interface with their mobile autonomous systems for the really cutting edge, futuristic, unmanned, uncrewed systems. We can also provide that kind of safety checklist functionality, access control for the more traditional manually operated machines. Either way, having control over your machines is a really important thing in maintaining safety.
All right, another great safety tip from Samuel Reeves of Fort Robotics. Definitely check them out if you're not familiar. They were on the podcast quite some time ago, so you can find them in the archives as well. And I'll throw a link in the comments or description here, so you can see that and get to it pretty easily. So we're going to get into our main segment. But before we do that, I do want to remind you, make sure it's Friday, and we've been releasing our newsletter on Friday, which basically just has a roundup of all the content that the New Warehouse has put out from this week. So make sure that you're subscribed to that on LinkedIn. It's right here on LinkedIn, and you can get that directly to your inbox, or you get the notification on LinkedIn, however you prefer. But if you're looking to find all of the content that we put out, and it's becoming a lot each week, you can find it all collectively in one space in that newsletter. So we're going to get into our main segment now with Rich Walsh of AMP. So I'm curious what you guys think about this and how it looks to you. I think it's really exciting and really a cool thing for the industrial athlete. So have a good Memorial Day weekend, and we'll catch up next week. Hey guys, I'm here for this episode of All Hands, and I am joined by Rich Walsh. He is the Chief Revenue Officer at AMP, and AMP is focused on bringing performance from athletes and performance metrics, and taking a look at how those things work and bringing them to an industrial setting and applying some of those thinkings in that way to be able to really understand your workers as athletes in a way, to be able to do that labor, keep them safe, keep them comfortable, make sure that they're taking care of their bodies, and you're taking care of them as well as the work that they're doing. So, Rich, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good, Kevin. Good to see you. Good to hear you. And I'm enjoying watching all your podcasts and appreciate them greatly. Look forward to sharing today.
Definitely happy to have you on for the second time, right? You shared a safety tip previously with us, and we kind of continued the conversation offline there and started talking a little bit more about AMP, what it is you guys do. And it's really an interesting product and platform that you're building out here, coming into the industrial setting. But talk to us a little bit about the origins of AMP, because I think it's pretty interesting where kind of this ethos and these thinkings come from.
Yeah. Good fortunes. Along that journey, there were some sentinel moments that led us into the industrial market, but we're real happy with where we are and really the production that we're receiving right now. We're a tech company. We started out as managing elite athletes for performance, and that started out with the Olympics, so the U.S. snow and ski-board team. And if you look at their workflow, they would come from all respective parts of the country, and they would meet with 5, 6, 7 different trainers, right? It could be a psychologist, a strength and conditioning. It could be diet, their general coaching. It could be athletic training, rehabilitation. But as they would convene in Colorado Springs and Park City, Utah, they would get a lot of information. And that information would come in 3-ring binders, PDFs, text messages, emails, printouts, you name it. And they would take all of that, throw it in the satchel, and head home to continue their training. We were inside that workflow and had the good fortunes of saying we need to be a little bit more efficient, a little bit more analytical, a little bit more automated. And so we created a software platform that the coaching staff could use and an application that the athlete could use. And that was their way of communicating, uplifting information, monitoring each other, looking at performance metrics. And it was really kind of a kumbaya moment. They did well in the Olympics. When we tried to look at next levels of consideration in terms of track and field and water polo and everything you can imagine, we found that the software customization was getting very sensitive, almost unscalable, because each of these unique entities wanted their own discipline. So by way of an unfortunate accident with one of the ski injuries, we ended up with the world-renowned Stedman Clinic in Vail, Colorado, where a doctor picked up on an athlete who was in his care, and he asked her what she was doing on her device, and she said, "This is how I'm staying interlocked with my team. I'm sure you're going to be recommending some rehabilitation post-surgery, and I'll uplift this, and my ATs can be kind of in a coordinated environment." So we ended up athlete management to orthopedic surgical recovery, because all of these orthopedic physicians wanted to digitize and have their affiliate PTs stay the course of their clinical pathway. So we started doing prehab, rehab, FAQs for large sports medicine orthopedics, which led us into some contracts with the military for Air Force in terms of musculoskeletal health, rehabilitative care. And that's where we started seeing tactical athlete and first responder, fire and police, and that led us into industrial. So from athlete to recovery to injury prevention and performance, and now we're really seated in the industrial.
Interesting. So from the Olympics to the warehouse floor, right? Pretty interesting, right? So tell us a little bit about, I guess right now, we may think about like, oh, like Olympic athletes are using this, and I think a lot of people may think that warehouse workers, Olympic athletes, not necessarily the same thing, right? But tell us how some of that stuff translates into the warehouse worker, and why that's important for them right now.
Yeah. Economically speaking, I think that currently, to retain an employee, to hire an employee, to have an employee that's fit for work in these labor-sensitive environments and this physical, fatigue, it's a critical time, to have that warehouse worker fit for work. So when you look at, a day in the life of a industrial athlete, so to say, there's very common themes. We've got to motivate, we've got to encourage, we've got to advocate, we've got to give them tools for physical, enablement. We've got to lean into diet, sleep, nutrition, best practices, hydration. It's the same thing as an athlete. We're just bringing that makeup and that ethos and that thesis to these industrial warehouses, and we're empowering ATs and OTs and PTs, directors of human performance, inside these walls to give that same care and that same sensitivity and that same advocating way to ensure that they're retained, they're hardened, and they're able to get through a physical week, and then also be able to participate at home with the kids and their lifestyle and hobbies.
Right.
So it's exciting, and I think it's being appreciated more and more when you look at the musculoskeletal spend, you look at what's going on with the mental capacity. Let's treat them like athletes. Let's give them the tools. Let's give them the opportunity to exceed and perform at the highest levels.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a great point there, because we look at, a lot of the labor tasks and jobs that are within the warehouse, distribution center, fulfillment centers, and they can be intensive. And like you said, I think we want employees that are able to, like you said, go home and do what they want to do, right? Not go home and feel like the only thing I can do is sit on the couch and try and recover for doing the same thing again tomorrow. So I think it's really important that you pointed that out, and it goes a long way for that employee retention as well, and trying to keep that labor happy and comfortable within the workplace, which we know now is very hard to get new workers. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of those existing workers. So I think you guys do this through a lot of different research and things that you've done in the past with athletes, and now you're translating it to the industrial world. But it's sort of a platform, right? So let's take a look at what this looks like, and how it kind of works for these companies, and then translates over to these industrial athletes, as you call them, as well.
Good. So Kevin, kind of the typical day in the life of a athletic trainer, a director of human performance, an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, whether they're on site, whether they're remote, whether they're kind of floating through the disciplines of different warehouses, different plants. They've got technology to really risk stratify, predict, look for vulnerabilities in that musculoskeletal makeup, of that industrial employee. They've got the opportunity to furnish them with recommendations on stretch and strength. They've got the opportunity to advocate for their health in terms of diet, sleep, nutrition, hydration. They've got the ability to show their employer specifically the return on investment from keeping these folks out of an OSHA recordable event. So we are taking that same platform and bringing it here. So in this example, we see all of the industrial employees on the left. We see in the middle with these boxes and these colors, scoring, musculoskeletal scoring, susceptibility to injury scoring. We've assigned them a program. We can see where they are in the program. We can see their status if they're enrolled. We can see any messages, HIPAA compliant messaging if they wanted to message the AT or the PT or the OT, any alerts, thrown alerts. So if there was a thrown alert we sent out a survey going into the month of May from a musculoskeletal, perspective, 1 to 5, how do you feel? We could flag anyone that responded with, a 4 or 5 that would alert up. So we're trying to be preventative. We're trying to be predictive. But this is that command and control center that the folks are using to care for these individuals. When I look at an individual, Dave demo, we can see a couple things. We can see what he is being recommended in terms of daily wellness questions, musculoskeletal strength, any type of information that we've advocated to send to him. This is what we know that is in his possession. We can see in terms of motion capture, vision recognition, sensors, wearable, any type of data that comes in, we can basically measure and put a score around, hey, are they musculoskeletally healthy or not? We take those parameters from metrics such as flexibility indexes and dynamic posture, but we're really breaking down. You talked about new hires. The prediction in the National Safety Council is that, in the first year, that's where the majority of events, workers' comp claims come because they're not fit for work. So we're really upfront looking at and empowering the ATs to get a baseline. And once they've got a baseline, they know what to recommend and share. But this is again a look at the AT saying, I've got Dave, I know his, minor demographics. I can see dominant hands, I can see job position. I can see what program I have this individual in. I can see other ATs or anyone else that has access to, the best interest of Dave. So simple screen, right? We've got the command and control center that bubbles up and shows us the sensitivities of our employees. I can delve in. I can also show you our program builder where we can create assessments and surveys. So example, this is a simple, foot and ankle, ability measure scoring, right? So we can use this on the floor, or we can send this in a survey format. We can bring in resources, any type of resource. I could, as an athletic trainer, go to the top guy at the warehouse, the CEO, and say, you don't interact much with the floor because you're in a different corporate environment. Wouldn't it be nice for you to advocate for this entire warehouse floor in terms of these hard labor employees? Right. We'd like to record you 30 minutes, talk about your appreciation, talk about maybe an incentive, and then we can send that out. And that way they're connected with the C-suite. So a lot of advocacy, a lot of resources, diet, sleep, nutrition, fatigue management. But folks are building this in their program, and they're saying, hey, let me go ahead and shoot specific exercises, uplift them. So they've got all of this, ability. And then once they have their programs designed, they're rendering these and recommending these to specific populations within that warehouse. It could be new hires. It could be a return from injury. It could be, let's look at the over 50 population. Let's look at a certain part of the warehouse that's receiving more injuries, and let's, condition them. So here's a fit for work training, 42 days, and that would be recommended and disseminated to that athlete. It can be printed. Again, it can be rendered in a mobile fashion. When we talk about
Rich, let me stop for a second.
Yeah.
So when we look at those exercises, right? So those are exercises that are provided and kind of set up by you guys, right? But if I look at, say, in the warehouse, obviously we talk about the warehouse, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know, how do I know, like, okay, what exercises are good for warehouse workers? Like, if somebody is unloading trucks and they're, picking up, putting down boxes all day, is there a way to kind of determine, like, what are the right exercises that I should be sending to them?
Yeah, these service providers
Mm,
are amazing, and we're getting more and more into some ergonomic functional capacity. We're getting into
mm,
um, the sensitivities of range of motion, torque. We're getting into frequency. We're getting into so many elements whereby that athletic trainer or that injury prevention service provider or that on-site care clinic or that risk management firm is
mm,
dialed into that specific job, that role, the placement of that role. And they know the sensitivities, and they're hardening the athletes around what would be the best exercise. But the first thing they're doing is they're doing maybe a job ergonomic analysis. And then they're looking at certain spend in that warehouse. Where are things being impacted? Where are people falling into OSHA recordables? They're breaking that job role down, and then they're basically looking at the capability of the worker and giving he or she the right exercises. So it's pretty sophisticated, and that's how prevalent this musculoskeletal disorder space is, that the
right.
sensitivities around these ergonomics and these ATs, they know what they're doing. Again, we're technology. We give this to service providers that are in the trenches with the employers.
Mm.
And based on that service provider and that employer relationship, they design what that total worker health program should look like. Great question, though.
Interesting. All right, cool.
Take a couple more slides, and then we'll bang out to really kind of um, the employee look. So again, when we build these fitness programs, again, these athletic trainers and these service providers are return to work, new hire, job conditioning, work hardening, um, uh, post evaluation workout. They're just building in these programs. They're standardizing because many of these employee service providers are around the country, and they have ATs. I mean, we're working with groups that have 100 ATs staffed, and they're all over the country. So they need a command and control center. They need a standardization, a centralization. Everybody needs to be working from the same playbook, so to say.
Mm,
But if we look at the employee view, and again, this is a sensitive subject, right? Some warehousers, employees, they're not on their iPhones and their Android devices, right? So don't have to render the program this way, but it's where we live 18 hours a day, 12 inches from our hand is this mobile device. So it's
yeah.
convenience, it's access, it's flexibility. And really what we're finding is that the employee appreciates having this connectivity and this tether in this
Mm,
relationship. So on this example of an employee, maybe on Monday, just for the entire week, they only had 3 tasks, right? They had to watch a hydration video. And once they complete that task, they can see a little gamification that in terms of their total worker health, they're a third of their way through their quick, recommendation list. Here's the exercises that they need to do. We always prompt at the end of the exercises discomfort score just in case. Why? Because we want to alert and bubble up sensitivities. They might text that AT and say, look, I'm still having that heel pain. Can we, set up a time to talk? This is that flexibility, that convenience. And then maybe there's a mind-body connection survey around mental resilience. And it's really, Kevin, having the opportunity to give them a resource library.
mm,
So we've gone over kind of the AT, PT, OT, physical therapist, command and control center, the housing, the data elements, the alert elements, the standardization. What employers really want to see is tell me, Mr. AT and Mr. PT and OT and on-site and injury prevention
right.
company, how are we doing in cost savings? right? So we like to munge some data together. In various instances, we might munge Salesforce.com with some other data and produce a dashboard for ROI and KPIs. So exciting times. We're in a preventative mode now. We're in a proactive mode, and we're just bringing tool functionality framework to these terrific service providers so that they can go into these warehouses and do some dynamic things.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's certainly an all-encompassing platform for all sides, like you said, from the therapist side to the employee side to now the employer side as well. And I think that last kind of show there on the actual cost savings. I mean, I think is so important because at the end of the day, even though safety should be like the number one thing, regardless of cost, it still comes down to cost, right? I mean, employers want to know, okay, like if I'm going to invest in something from a safety tech standpoint, what's my ROI? Like, how am I going to get that money back? Which sometimes is not that easy to visualize or put down on paper, but when you start to look and you start to understand that preventing injuries is going to save you a lot of money in the long run. Because if you look at some of the numbers for estimates of actual recordable injuries, time away from work, all this stuff, I mean it's astronomical. So being able to have that preventativeness on that cost savings is huge. But then also touching back on our earlier point of keeping those employees comfortable and keeping their well-being top of mind can save you a ton too, because they're not feeling frustrated, they're not uncomfortable, they're not performing under where they're going to perform because they're in pain and they're not saying anything, or eventually they're going to leave because it's just like I'm too tired at the end of the day, it's too much labor. So you're able to keep tabs on all that and really understand that, and I think just create an overall better environment for the employee. So I think it's a really great product that you're putting out there, and being able to provide this content, because I think that's one of the most difficult things sometimes. And speaking from being a warehouse manager, sometimes it's hard to pull in content and then worry about the actual warehouse work as well, and figure out like, am I gonna find a video, or am I gonna find an article or something? How am I gonna share this with employees? So giving them a way to do that and have content to pull from that makes sense, that's been researched and can be applied to different aspects of the job is a huge thing. So Rich, thank you so much for coming on All Hands today and telling us about the AMP platform and the content you guys are putting out there. Very excited to see how this continues to grow in the warehousing and industrial space. And I think it's a great thing that you're using the term industrial athletes. I really like that. So thank you so much. And if people are interested in learning more about AMP, how can they do that?
Find us on LinkedIn, amprecover.com website. We welcome these conversations. It's about retention, it's about productivity, and it's about that culture. And we think that we're doing some neat things out there. Some great ATs out there. Love to share our story, but reach out. We can do demos. We can talk about who's using, how the ROI is coming. And again, thanks, Kevin, for these podcasts. They're absolutely amazing. And these podcasts should be uploaded and rendered to some of these industrial, athletes when they're driving home from a long, busy day. So some cool things here. Love to do it again soon,
maybe
Kevin.
Maybe we can figure that out.
Yes.
We'll talk about that. So stay tuned. All right. So Rich, thank you so much. And definitely check out AMP and all they're doing for the industrial athlete.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Take care.